Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I'm going to make a huge claim that I've never made in this podcast's history. Over 1,000 episodes, and I can confidently say that today's guest, as soon as our team landed on her website, we were unanimous in the fact that this is the best copy we've ever seen. If you read through her stuff, there's only one thing you're hoping for at the bottom of her page, and that is a buy now button, because today's guest is truly incredible with words and copywriting, and most importantly, above all of those things, what fuels it is stories and telling the right story. So let me tell you all about today's guest. Her name is Kris Jones, and in Kris's bio, I want to read this to you because I think that this is immediately going to stoke those pain points that we all feel. You ready for this? Most business owners miss out on sales because their website copy isn't working. The truth is, being good at what you do is very different than being good at talking about what you do. Kris's signature story selling system helps consultants, coaches, and service providers replace all of their marketing with a single story so they can attract more clients, amplify revenue, and enjoy more time freedom. Kris founded her company Red Door Stories in 2003 and was mentored by Donald Miller, who is the author of Building a Story Brand. She's worked with high-profile companies including Nike and Adidas, but her favorite clients are self-employed service providers because they struggle the most with copywriting and can experience the greatest benefits once they get their story right. Some of the extraordinary results she's helped them achieve include increasing revenue by 300%, scaling from 30K months to 300K months. I personally know how many of you listeners are interested in that sort of scale, charging 6 times more for the same service, booking a record-breaking amount of lead calls. All of this stuff that Kris is going to teach us today can transform not just your marketing, but your business and how excited people are to work with you. I know that because I'm excited to learn from Kris here today. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Kris Jones. All right, Kris, I'm so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Heck yes, Kris, I will transparently tell you this. I'm always excited to introduce our guests, but there was a little extra excitement in your intro today because the work you do is incredible. You've got to take us beyond the bio to kick things off. Who's Kris? How did you start doing all these amazing things?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. Well, where do I begin with that? It's been a long and wonderful road. I started way back in the early 2000s. I got initially into brand design. So I felt like my calling back then was really all about storytelling through visual storytelling. And I really cut my teeth in the industry doing that and working with larger companies around that. And as time went on, I really was drawn to the solopreneurs and the small business owners and the entrepreneurs. And over time, really the landscape online shifted. So I had been working with a lot of clients on designing beautiful websites. And I would really ask my clients to provide me with the copy for those websites. And I would watch them struggle with it. They might hire a copywriter. They might try and do it themselves. What would happen most often is they would call me and say, I'm not going to reach this due date for when I need to hand my copy over to you so you can start the design of the website. And they would, if they hired a copywriter, they would feel like the copy just felt a little off. It didn't feel really aligned with their voice. So I watched that struggle happen enough that I just put my foot down and said, I'm not going to let my clients go through this anymore. And that was about the same time that, like, I should start here. When I started, all you needed to be a legitimate business was to have a website online. This is like 2008. If you had a website, you were legit and you would get business. And then over the years, that really shifted, and it became very clear to me that the words that you say on your website, the story that you tell on your website, is really the foundation of your brand, and the design is actually a secondary. And so once I realized that, I really just made it my mission to learn how to tell a really powerful story online for business owners. And I traveled across the country for workshops. I read books. I became one of the very first story brand guides, which was even before the book Building a Story Brand came out. So that really filled my toolbox with a lot more knowledge and wisdom around how to tell a really powerful story and how to turn your website into your most powerful sales employees. So as I started to learn this new approach or these new tools in my toolbox and started implementing those, my clients started calling me with incredible results. Like, it was so affirming, because it was like, wow, this is working, and it's working immediately. And at the same time, I was applying these same principles of storytelling to my own marketing and to my own website. And the same thing was happening to me. I was getting clients like that were traveling to Portland to meet me because they wanted to work together on big projects. And my sales calls were getting booked out. My project calendar was getting booked out. And I started to really have consistent revenue every month. And prior to that, I had been really relying a lot on referrals. And as great as referrals are, they're not the most consistent from month to month. And it's stressful to run a business on referrals. I really knew that I wanted to create an engine for my business that would really turn that website into a top sales employee. And I wanted to be able to really guarantee to my clients that I was going to set them up with the tools to do that too.
Yeah, Kris, I love that overview, especially because hearing you talk about it, and really when you took us into that part of the story about watching other people try to write website copy, it's something that all of us can relate to. Every single person who's hearing us right now can relate to that, where we figure out, what is our headline going to be? Okay, perfect. What do we write underneath that headline? It doesn't sound like you're giving us a way to do that. It sounds like what you're telling us is a completely different alternative to the way that we've always viewed that. It seems different, not a different way to do it. So I want to start there. What is the difference when you talk about starting with that story? What does that even look like? Because most people probably haven't even seen that.
Yeah, well, it is different, but also it's the way story is told in every book you've ever read, every movie you've ever watched. A real story always begins with a hero that has a problem they don't know how to solve. And they're stuck in that problem. That's why we get engaged in stories. That's why when we go to a movie, we sit in that chair for 90 minutes and we don't even check our phone. Nothing has the power to capture our attention like stories do. So I'll give you like the quick 20-second overview of what a story is, and then I'll talk about how to apply that in your own business. So every story begins with a hero that has a problem they don't know how to solve. They're out and about on the internet asking their friends. They're looking for a guide who can help them solve that problem. And the guide shows up about a third of the way in the story and really has a plan to help that hero navigate their way to success. And the way that story works in marketing when it's done well is really positioning yourself as the guide in the story and your clients as the hero of the story. The hero, that's really putting your potential clients first and foremost and letting them know that they matter, that you understand them, you help them feel seen and heard, and then you enter into the story about a third of the way through. So it's a very different way of moving through a website, and I like to say it feels like when you come to a website that really uses story in the right way, it feels like you're getting a hug. which is pretty cool. So the main thing here is that you are the guide in the story and your clients are the hero.
Yeah, I love that overview, Kris, especially because obviously there's so many things, the intricacies within each ingredient that you just went over for us. And I'm going to go here because I know that a lot of listeners, we've obviously heard about storytelling and marketing and business before, but a lot of them will get caught up at that first obstacle, which is, Kris, I don't have a story. You're talking about my clients being the heroes of a story. What if I don't even have any clients? Like, how do I start uncovering this in order to find the right story?
Yeah, well, the key is really honing in on who you work with or who you want to work with. And even if you have to kind of brainstorm it, if you don't have clients yet, you can do that. There are ways to find that information, but the top priority is to really hone in on what is that hero struggling with the most. And I ask my clients, I say, when you're on the phone with your clients, what are they complaining about? What are they waking up in the middle of the night and ruminating on? And if you don't have clients yet, you can find a book that talks about the type of work that you're doing or that's helping the same audience that you want to help. And you can look at the reviews of that book on Amazon and get language from there. When people talk about the book, they'll often talk about what they were struggling with and what the book solved for them.
Yeah, definitely so many sources. At this point, I think that brainstorming and content should be the least of our excuses these days because we've got AI, we've got product reviews on Amazon. You're right. The real life feedback, conversations on Reddit and other social media platforms, it's just abundant that we can tap into that language regardless of where we are inside of that circle or outside of it. So, Kris, I appreciate those insights. I want to kick things up a notch because I've gone so deep inside of your work and I love the way that you do everything. And I want to iterate for listeners here today that we're not just talking, as I alluded to, we're not just talking about a way to do your marketing. We're talking about, I'm just going to read a headline from your website, how I replaced almost all of my marketing with a single story. Kris, what does that mean to actually replace our marketing with a story?
So first, I want to clarify your story, your marketing story. You are a character in that story. It's not your founder's story. It's not about the history of your business and how your business came to be. It's really a story, a narrative that you're going to craft. And this story invites your potential clients into a narrative with you, a narrative where they're the hero and you're the guide. And so when you take the time to craft your own story in this way, you have a powerful way of communicating and connecting with people and really building trust because no one wants to work with you if they don't trust you. So we want to really double down on authentic connection and trust there and really inspire them to take action. I like to think of your signature story a lot like an accordion. So we write your signature story. This is what I do with all my clients, and it's the foundation of the work that we do. So we write the signature story, we get that on paper, and then it works a lot like an accordion. So let's just say your main story is here, the longest version of your story is here on your website. A shorter version of your story is going to be like a video script, and a shorter version of it is going to be what I call a one-liner, or which is also kind of the answer to the question, what do you do? It can also be used in all your social media profiles. So the idea is to have this one story, and you have different lengths of it or different versions of it, but it's all the same story. So everywhere you show up is online and in person is very, very consistent. You're using the same language. Many people might look at it like, this is too lazy. It should be harder. I should be reinventing my message and making it fresh. But actually, people need to hear things 8 times before they can commit it to memory. So it really serves you to be consistent with the same story over and over and over again. And that's the way you become really memorable, and that you're top of mind when somebody has that problem. They know that you're the person that solves it.
Yeah, Kris, I'll ask you this because I always think about the listeners and where they're at in their business journeys and probably the things that they're screaming at their speakers right now saying, Brian, ask this one question. And it is, you seem so comfortable with the fact that you just made at the end there, which is we don't need to reinvent anything. And I would argue that entrepreneurs, it's almost a great thing, but to a fault, is that we love creating things. We love putting the work in. And so a lot of entrepreneurs, they'll launch a new product or a new service. They'll create an entirely new course. They'll come up with 50 different social media post ideas rather than doubling down or 10xing or 100xing down on the thing that works. I see too many entrepreneurs think that new is always going to be the solution there. So I'm sure the critics might be thinking, well, Kris, do I vary the story? Do I, if I'm on a podcast episode, do I talk about something slightly different when I'm doing a YouTube video or writing a blog post? Is it varied? How much variance is there versus no, this is the signature story that we're committing to and we're going to ride it?
Yeah, I would recommend you stick with your signature story and write it. It doesn't mean that you can't be creative within it, but really it's a lot like guardrails or like those bumpers that they've got in bowling alleys. It's really a filtration device to help you clear out the noise and really stay true to the core of your message. I think what happens as entrepreneurs is we wear a lot of hats and we have this underlying belief that the harder we work, the more likely we are to succeed or make more money. And it's just not the case. You have to be very strategic and your energy is so valuable. So you really want to be able to put your marketing tools on autopilot and just know they're working for you because you have plenty other hats to wear. So you can focus on the work that you love. Nobody really becomes an entrepreneur because they love marketing. It's kind of like a necessary evil for most people. And so build a foundation, create a consistent story, let that work for you so you can focus on other things that are more important.
Yeah. And listeners, I can tell you, having done the research on Kris's work, one of the terms that I saw keep popping up in her copy is simplify to amplify. And so if you've been looking for that sort of permission in your business, here Kris is giving it to all of us today. So I so appreciate that, Kris. I want to ask you this next question, because I would imagine that part of your superpowers is that you talk about that noise. I would imagine you're incredible at stripping away that noise and asking the right questions to get at the stuff that matters. Talk to us about some of the questions that you ask your clients as part of that process. And I know a lot of it is your secret sauce, so you don't have to go too deep into it, but I'd love to hear some of those insights into where you at least start to uncover the signature story.
Yeah, I call this process, it's step one in my process. I call it mining for gold because your story is inside of you. It's in there. It's in your head and your heart. It's just kind of cluttered up with a lot of different other ideas. So it's hard to decipher from inside your own brain, which is the gold and which is the clutter. And so that's why I come in with a fresh perspective and an expertise in story, and I can really identify that golden thread that is your story. The reason this is so hard for entrepreneurs to do is because of what I call the bottle effect. And the bottle effect is really writing your own copy is really hard because you're inside of the bottle. You're so close to your own business and you're inside the bottle trying to read the label that can only be read from the outside. And so no matter how hard we try to work on our own copy, we just can't get the perspective that we need to read that label clearly. And so I come in and I mine for that gold and I ask you those questions to pull your story out of you. And as you can imagine, we spend a fair amount of time really getting down the problem of what your clients are struggling with. And we take a lot of time with that. We also really take the time to envision a brighter future for our clients, like really showing them what's possible. That's a really important role as the guide. We become the guide in our story by showing up with really authenticity and authority. But above and beyond that, we show up with empathy. And so really just showing up and showing them a brighter future and really being clear on what's possible for them is a big part of it. I like to ask my clients, underneath it all, what do your clients really want? What do they really want underneath it all? Often it's a core desire like freedom or abundance or wellness. So we dig deep, but we go through all the layers together. It's a really, really wonderful process. The other thing that we do is answer important questions that people have when they come to your website. So what is it about you that makes you and your approach different from everybody else's? Most industries are just so crowded online, whether it's the coaching industry or wellness industry. It's hard to really stand out from the crowd. And what happens is a lot of entrepreneurs look at their competitors' websites for inspiration. And I totally understand why people do this. But the downside is your website ends up kind of looking like everybody else's when we really want you to stand out. And the way to stand out is by telling a really powerful signature story, but also telling a really powerful visual story. When the written story and the visual story are really in alignment and supporting each other, that's when you really bubble up to the top of the internet and begin to stand out as a leader in your industry.
Yeah, Kris, I really appreciate these insights into your actual strategy and the process really in uncovering all of this important work, because as someone who's seen what the end results look like, I just want to clarify that stuff for listeners, because I have the benefit of seeing your website beforehand and obviously while we're talking here today. But for listeners, I'll confess publicly that the one thing that stood out to me in the way that Kris's clients talk about the nature of this work is that it makes the hard decisions for them. So when you sit down to write copy, you're not thinking about it because you already have the answers. And Kris, I want to go here with you, even during our conversation today, about the output, because you're talking about the process that you go through. But I love that what they end up with is your brand copy Bible, one document that contains all the words you'll ever need to market your business. No more struggling with what to say, just copy and paste it from your brand Bible. Talk to us about what's within there, because on your website, I love how you lay it out about how those impacts are going to trickle into your website, which you talked to us about, into your homepage video, into your lead magnet, your email marketing. Talk to us about how powerful that document is and where the magic of it really lies.
Oh, it's incredibly powerful to have one document with everything in it. So yeah, all the deliverables are within that brand copy Bible: your video script, your website copy, your one-liner, your unique way of doing your work, which is what I call like an infographic. So what's a visual that really shows your process and your unique way of doing things. And the beauty of the brand copy Bible is that we've broken down every aspect of your story. There are 7 components to every story. And so we really delve deep into each of those components within the brand copy Bible. So you can pop in there and use that copy and bring it into social media, or bring it into, if you're sharing like a podcast introduction, if you're doing a podcast interview. I really recommend the one-liner be put in your email signature. So every email that goes out that you send, really, that repetition is key. It really repeats over and over. What problem do you solve? And what's the happy end result that your clients are getting? That's core in the one-liner work that we do. But all of that is baked into the brand copy Bible, along with other trainings that show you how to infuse this story into your social media. And I actually encourage my clients to turn their Instagram grid into a really powerful sales page and then take the year off of posting. That's what I've done, and it's working beautifully.
I love that perspective. Kris, this goes counter to most advice that people will hear on business podcasts, and I'm here for it. Talk to us about that, because a lot of people are encouraged to create all these new things, as we talked about, and social media is at the core of that. But you've talked about so many different ways that this helps to grow our business. Obviously, I'm a raving fan of your business. I feel like, even unprompted, you and I didn't interact much before we hit record today, but already I'm a fan of the way that your business shows up and the impact that you bring for your clients. And it comes not because of something I saw on your social media, but because of the words. Talk to us about the power of that in a world where we're all pressured to make all these social media posts every day. And heck, if we listen to Gary Vee, he'll tell us to make 30 of those posts a day.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in years past, I've fallen into that kind of belief that we have to be posting all the time and ever present in order to, stay top of mind, and be visible and to get clients. But it just never felt really aligned with my approach to marketing and the way that I want to run my business and the time capacity that I have, which is fairly limited as a parent. And so I essentially, what I did is took the story components and turned my Instagram grid into a really powerful sales page by telling a story. So when someone learns about you, whether it's online or through a podcast interview, I mean, you still have to market your business. You just don't have to do everything. I like to think of marketing as a hub and spoke visual. So your website's in the middle of that, and everything you do around to market your business points to the website, because you just have trust and know that the website is the tool that's doing the most powerful work of selling for you. So there's all kinds of ways that you can market your business. I often market my business through podcast interviews. You can market your business through social media. You can market it through networking events. You can do all kinds of things, but whatever you do, I say pick one or two that you actually really like to do. So my two are email marketing and podcast interviews. And then I point everybody to my website, and then that does the converting for me.
Yeah, I want to ask you this question then, because the deeper I went into your work, it seems like the real trickle-down effect comes in that sales and that conversion, because you talk about your website doing a lot of that work for you. And it's how I felt as a consumer going to your website. I meant what I said in the intro, which is, I wish there was a buy now button at the bottom, Kris. And I can understand how intimate your process is working one-on-one with people, that it leads to a conversation. But I want to ask you about how different that means your sales process is, because it just seems to me from the outside looking in, I'm making an assumption right now, but you view sales in the same way that I do, which is it's not pushy. You and I are not classically trained salespeople out of Grant Cardone University or whatever it is that he's out there pushing today. And so instead, we believe in having a real conversation and doing it on a really human level. What have you found to be the impacts of the signature storytelling approach on those sales conversations? Because I would imagine that most of your sales conversations don't even revolve around sales, and they probably feel like the first session in the two of you working together.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest strategic byproducts of getting clear on your own story is that you've got the words internally for your story. They're also on your website, but you just show up on your sales calls with so much more confidence because you know the words to say. And this is not about memorizing a script, but you understand fundamentally the problem that you solve and really how you help your clients achieve success. And there's a lot of components in between there. But when you show up to those calls with confidence, I mean, my clients, and I can vouch for this for myself, I never feel like I'm selling. I'm just walking my clients through the process that I use and connecting with them around their struggle and helping reassure them that I can help them resolve it. And so it very much does not feel like a sales call, which who wants to be sold to anyway? So it's a real gift to actually look forward to sales calls, which is what a lot of my clients do. And one client in particular, her name's Andrea. She was closing about 25% of her sales calls, which is actually quite good. But once we got her story in place, and she really knew on a cellular level how powerful the work that she did is, she showed up to those sales calls with such confidence and such clarity that she began to close 95% of her sales calls. So every call that was booked, she would close, and it was pretty incredible for her business.
Yeah, Kris, I knew that time would run by so quickly here today, but I want to squeeze in 2 questions because part of your magic, gosh, I could pull out so many different things that make you so unique and incredible at all the things you do, but part of what stood out for me is your testimonials. Kris, not only do you do great work and not only can you articulate that work very clearly, but your clients genuinely love you and they love raving about the work that you do with them as well and the impacts that you deliver. So my question to you is, business owner to business owner, how are you getting such amazing testimonials from these clients?
I am so glad you asked that question, because for my clients, they struggle with that, and they come to me and they're like, number one, they say, I felt good about working with you because you have so many people raving about the work that you've done for them. So it really does help my business. But what I have done internally for that is it comes back to storytelling again. What I do with my clients is I schedule a 10-minute, that's all it takes. It's a 10-minute wrap-up call about a month after our project is complete. And I ask them 4 questions. The 4 questions I ask pull that story out of them and speak to the transformation that happened to them. And then I edit those interviews into script and I upload them. So it's a really, I think it's a really important thing for entrepreneurs to ask their clients for testimonials. But even the best of clients, they want to give us a raving review, but they don't know what to say. It really does come back to that. Like, it's that ripple effect of struggle around copy. And so what they end up, like, when you kind of put this ask on your clients to give you a review, they're looking at a blank screen, like a blank Google Doc, and trying to figure out what to say. And they end up saying things like, oh, Jenny was so fun to work with. We really clicked. I really enjoyed the process, and I'd highly recommend working with her again. And while it feels good to hear those words about ourselves that we're fun or great or smart, really the best testimonials aren't really about you. They're about your client, and they're about the transformation that happened for them through working with you. Like, who did they become because they got to work with you? And so when you ask the right questions, and I have trainings on my process around this because I've honed it and streamlined it so well and made it very efficient for my clients and very efficient for me. So it just lets everybody off the hook, because your clients, rather than trying to come up with something to say about working with you, you ask them for strategic questions and pull that testimonial out of them. And then you compile those answers together into one narrative.
Yeah, I appreciate those insights and that transparency. And I really love the way you articulated it there of it lets them off the hook. As a podcast host, I get so many emails from listeners all over the world, and I love every single one of those emails, listeners. So keep them coming. But the ones that are so broad and it puts the onus on me, Kris, those are the hardest ones to answer. When someone says, I'm just starting my business, what advice do you have? Gosh, I want to help you in a million ways, but I don't know where to start. Whereas those ones that say, hey, I'm really struggling with sales, and this is what my process looks like. What do you see from your vantage point? So much easier to have an opinion there. So the fact that you do that heavy lifting for your clients is incredible, and it shines through because you're right. They want to give you those reviews. So I really appreciate those insights, Kris. I'm excited to hear how you answer this last question. Just speaking of, I am going to put the onus on you on this one, Kris, and that is, what's your one best piece of advice or that one takeaway, knowing that listeners are tuning in at all different stages of their business growth journey and personal growth journeys as well, and they're probably quite quite convinced in your approach of doing marketing and putting their message out there for the world to see and really getting closer to those ideal customers and clients they want to work with. What's that one thing that you want to leave them with from today's episode?
Take the time to tell your own story. Invest a little bit of time to tell a story in your business, a story that invites your clients or your potential clients into a narrative with you. And I actually have a freebie that will walk you through this. It's called How to Write Compelling Copy in 5 Minutes Flat. And I ask you 3 strategic questions, and you have a document that you can brain dump your ideas into and then hone it throughout the process. It doesn't take more than, I would say, 20 minutes tops to really do the work. And then that will be the foundation of the way you communicate about your business. So I want you to put on the lens of really being the guide in your story and not the hero.
Yes, Kris, you're making my life easy today because natural segue, you got to drop those links on us because listeners will be keen on getting their hands on that freebie. And I also want to interject that not only do you have incredible resources and a free guide for everybody on your website, but you also do a lot of podcasts, as you say. And in so many of those podcasts, you show up so real. And it's something I appreciate as a podcast host, that it doesn't matter to you what topic we go into, you so effortlessly and with real authenticity and transparency are willing to go there. So listeners, definitely check out Kris's website. Kris, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, there's one place to go. My website does all the heavy lifting for me. So go to Door Stories, STORIES, reddoorstories.com. And there you can get my free guide. You can learn how to work with me. You can schedule a 40-minute money-making messaging call with me as well.
Yeah, so listeners, you already know the drill. We are making it as easy as possible for you to find that link, reddoorstories.com, down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. And then Kris also makes it as easy as possible for you. Once you hit that link, you're going to find a whole world of goodness that's going to get you so excited to really just redo the way that you show up in the world and really replace all those frustrating times you sit in front of your computer saying, what do I write here? How do I create something that's compelling, that's captivating, that will convert? Definitely check out reddoorstories.com. Kris, you have been such a wealth of knowledge. You absolutely lived up to expectations and beyond here today. So on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.